At my husband's funeral, his phone lit up. The message shocked me, and in that single moment I felt the world shift beneath my feet in a way no grief had ever prepared me for, because even though people say funerals make your mind play tricks, what I saw was too real, too precise, too cold to be imagination. And as the dim morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of the church, painting the wooden casket in soft colors that contradicted the heaviness in my chest, I felt something inside me tighten, something instinctive and ancient, like a woman who suddenly senses danger she cannot yet name, because that phone had been placed inside his casket only an hour earlier, wrapped gently beside the suit I insisted he wore, the same suit he used to wear on our anniversaries, the one he always said made him feel like a man who had built a life worth respecting. And now here I was staring at its impossible glow, the faint vibration echoing through the flowers arranged on top of the coffin, shaking the lilies ever so slightly, the petals trembling like hands holding a truth too heavy to keep steady. And as I leaned forward, pretending to adjust the white rose pinned to the lid, I felt the air shift around me, the quiet murmurs of the mourners fading into a distant hum, as if the entire church were waiting for me to acknowledge what had just happened, what I had just seen, what I could no longer unsee, because that notification, short, glowing, deliberate, was not from a bank or the network provider or any system sending random automated condolences. No, it was a name, a woman's name, one I didn't recognize. Angela. And even before I saw the preview of the message, my heart did that strange drop-knock pattern, the kind that only comes when something familiar suddenly feels foreign, and I already sensed, that whatever truth lay ahead would not be soft or gentle, but sharp enough to break something inside me that had already been weakened by grief. And as I tilted my head, letting my tears mask my intention, I finally read it. 3 simple words that burned into my mind with the force of a slap. You promised me. And though the rest of the message was hidden behind the locked screen, those words alone pierced through me, raising questions so dark and so immediate that even the pastor's voice seemed to fade. Because why would a woman text my dead husband at the exact hour of his burial? Why would she use a tone so accusing, so familiar, so intimate, unless there was something between them, something I had never been meant to know, but something he had carried with him even into death? And suddenly I could not breathe. Suddenly every lie I had never suspected felt like dust filling my lungs, and the phone vibrated again, harder this time, and I reached for it, my hand shaking so violently I feared I might collapse. But I forced myself to grip it, to take it, to claim the truth no matter how much it hurt, because the worst kind of pain is not the one you anticipate but the one hidden behind the person you trusted most. And as my fingers brushed the cold screen, I felt eyes on me, dozens of them, whispering silently, wondering why the grieving widow was disturbing the coffin, why she was reaching for something inside it, why she suddenly looked like she had seen a ghost more frightening than the corpse lying before her. And I swallowed a hard breath, my throat burning as I lifted the phone from the silk lining, its glow illuminating my palm like a secret finally resurfacing after years underwater. And when I pressed the fingerprint sensor, the one I had memorized out of love, routine, and marriage, I braced myself for whatever truth waited inside. But before the screen unlocked, before the universe delivered the blow I felt coming, the heavy doors at the back of the church creaked open, and the sound echoed across the pews like a warning. And as every head turned slowly toward the entrance, mine did too, my body freezing mid-breath as a tall woman stepped in wearing a black veil and holding the hand of a small boy who couldn't have been older than 6. And something in the familiarity of their silhouettes made my bones tremble, because grief teaches you to recognize sorrow. But this didn't look like sorrow. It looked like unfinished business. And as the boy tugged the woman forward, his eyes scanning the church with a certainty that made my heart pound harder, I realized the way he carried himself, the shape of his jaw, the intensity of his gaze. He looked like someone I knew too well, someone whose features lived inside my home, in my memories, in my son's. And as I watched them walk slowly, silently, deliberately toward the front of the church, toward me, I felt the phone unlock in my hands with a soft click. And at the exact same moment the woman stopped 3 pews behind me, lifting her veil just enough for me to see her eyes. Eyes filled not with grief but with something dangerously close to ownership, and everything inside me stilled, absolutely stilled, because the truth I had been afraid of was no longer in the phone. It was standing at the back of the church, breathing, watching, waiting. And as the screen lit up to reveal messages that made my stomach twist, the woman opened her mouth just slightly, not speaking but shaping 2 silent words that broke through me like glass. His promise, and with the weight of that unspoken confession pressing into My ribs, I knew my grief was about to unravel into something much darker because the funeral wasn't just where I came to say goodbye. It was where I was about to learn the life my husband lived behind my back. A truth waiting to crush me piece by fragile piece. And as the phone buzzed again in my trembling hands, I realized this moment was only the beginning of a revelation I was never meant to survive. And the truth inside that unlocked screen pulled me forward, deeper into the kind of pain that does not end, but transforms everything it touches. I knew the moment the screen unlocked that whatever I was about to see would rearrange my entire understanding of the man I buried. But what I didn't expect was the way my body reacted instantly, as if my spirit tried to step outside itself to avoid the impact of the truth. Because the first message staring back at me was a continuation of the preview I had seen only moments earlier, and it read, "I hope your wife never finds out what really happened," and that single sentence cut through my chest. In a way even death had not managed to do, because betrayal has a different kind of teeth, sharper, deeper, more personal, and as my hands trembled around the glowing screen, I felt the world around me blur at the edges, the choir's soft humming turning into an echo I could barely recognize, my son's hand on my shoulder feeling suddenly distant, and all I could see was that message and the strange woman standing behind me with the small boy who looked too familiar, too connected to the life I built, and I felt the grief inside me transform into a heavier weight, something dense and suffocating, as if the funeral was no longer about a death but about a hidden life unspooling itself at my feet. I scrolled, my fingertips sliding down the screen with the kind of dread that makes your heartbeat stutter, and more messages appeared. Hundreds, maybe thousands, each one a silent blow, each one a confession I had never received from the man I trusted for more than half my life. And the oldest message in the thread dated back 7 years. A simple "Don't leave me like this again, please." And I froze because 7 years ago was the year my marriage hit a strange, quiet shift. A year he suddenly became attentive in a way that felt more like compensation than love. A year he surprised me with gifts I never asked for. A year he started blinking harder whenever I asked where he had been. And back then I told myself marriage goes through seasons, that perhaps we were simply finding our way through one of those unspoken storms couples weather together. But now, staring at the truth spilling from the phone, I realized it wasn't a storm. It was a secret I had been left outside of, pacing the edges while he lived another version of himself in a place I had never been invited to see. My breath shook as I scrolled again, pausing on a picture. A blurry photo of the little boy who now stood at the back of the church, wearing a tiny suit, his fingers gripping the woman's hand as if she were the only anchor he had. And seeing his face on my husband's phone made my stomach twist with a fear I didn't yet know how to name, because he didn't just resemble my husband. He resembled my youngest son, and the world inside my chest tilted so violently I had to grip the pew to steady myself. A wave of memory washed over me then, uninvited, cruel in its timing. Nights when my husband came home smelling of unfamiliar perfume, weeks when he claimed to be traveling for work but never showed a single booking confirmation, mornings when he stared at his phone as if waiting for someone to message him first before he could breathe. And now, with the truth pulsing from the screen in my hands, all those small moments clicked together like pieces of a puzzle I should have seen years ago, but I had been too loyal, too trusting, too determined to believe my marriage was built on honest foundations. My throat tightened as I continued reading, stumbling onto a message from just 3 months ago when he was already sick, when I was carrying him to doctors, praying over him at night, whispering words of hope into his fading body. And yet here he was typing to her, telling her he was sorry he couldn't visit anymore, telling her he was afraid the truth would come out, telling her he needed her to stay calm until he figured out a plan. And the betrayal in those lines hit me with such force I had to swallow 3 times before I could breathe again. A sudden movement behind me made my body stiffen, and when I lifted my eyes, the woman in the veil had stepped forward another row, her posture steady, her gaze unwavering, her presence intentional, and she stood there like someone waiting for permission to enter the part of my life she had been occupying in secret for years. And I felt anger rise inside me. A slow, simmering kind of anger that doesn't scream but burns from the inside out. Because how dare she come here to this place on this day with this child? How dare she stare at me as if I owed her something, as if I were the one interrupting her grief? But as I looked into her eyes, something shifted, something subtle yet undeniable. She didn't look triumphant, she looked terrified, and that realization softened nothing but complicated everything, because fear doesn't lie easily, and she looked like a woman holding a truth she didn't want to carry alone anymore. I clutched the phone tighter, scrolling again, and then I saw it. A voice note dated the night before he died, 11:47 p.m. A time when I had been sitting beside him holding his weak hand as he drifted in and out of consciousness, and I remembered thinking he was murmuring prayers. But now, seeing this recording, my stomach curled inward because if he had been recording something, sending something, whispering something into his phone that late at night while I sat at his bedside, then my grief was not only for his death, it was for the life I thought we had, the life that now felt like a carefully folded sheet covering something rotten underneath. I pressed play. His voice emerged softly, hoarse, weak, breathless. He said her name. He apologized. He told her he wished he had more time. He told her he didn't know how to fix things anymore. He told her not to bring the boy to the hospital because I was always there. He told her to give him time to explain after his next surgery, but he never survived that surgery, and the last thing he said in that recording shattered me completely. If anything happens to me, take the boy to the church. She deserves to know the truth. She can help you. Her. Me. Help her. Help her with what? A pain that was not mine to create? A child that was not mine to raise? A life that was not mine to share? My hands shook so violently I almost dropped the phone, and suddenly the veil woman stepped forward again, close enough now that I could hear the small boy sniffle, and the sound pierced through me, raw and unexpected, because innocence has no part in betrayal, and the boy was just a child dragged into a mess created by adults who made choices none of us could undo. My vision blurred as more memories surfaced. My husband's late-night calls, the excuses he made about work crises, the sudden generosity that didn't match our finances, the moments he stood in the kitchen looking at me with something close to regret. And now everything made sense, every unsaid thing, every unasked question, every night he held me too tightly as if afraid I would slip through his fingers if I discovered the truth. I turned slightly, my eyes landing on the boy, and in that fleeting second when our gazes met, something inside me cracked. He had my husband's eyes, the same deep, thoughtful brown that once made me fall in love, and I felt something unexpected rise inside me, not compassion, not acceptance, but a quiet, devastating understanding. The truth was no longer a theory, it was standing right in front of me, breathing. I looked down at the phone again, forcing myself to scroll to the newest messages, and that's when I saw the final one, the one that arrived minutes after the funeral started. Bring him in, he deserves to say goodbye to his father. My father. Those two words were a punch to the chest I didn't see coming, and suddenly the church felt too small, the air too tight, the weight of everyone's eyes too heavy on my skin, and as I raised my head to look fully at the woman, really look at her, the boy beside her reached forward, his small fingers stretching toward me as if drawn by something only he could feel, and his touch, though he never actually reached me, sent a tremor through my bones I couldn't explain. The woman inhaled sharply, her lips parting as if she were finally about to speak, finally about to unburden her truth onto my already breaking world. And something in the way her throat tightened made my heart race with a new kind of fear, because her expression wasn't just grief or guilt, it was urgency, as if she had come here not to confront me but to protect me from something far bigger than a secret child and an affair. And as she opened her mouth, the doors of the church slammed shut behind her with a force that made everyone jump, and a deep, unsettling silence fell over the room as she finally whispered the first word she had spoken all morning. Please. And in that moment I realized the truth I had discovered so far was only the surface of something far deeper, something dangerous, something waiting just outside the edges of the life I thought I understood. And as the boy tugged her sleeve and pointed toward me again, I felt a shiver run down my spine, because the next thing she was about to tell me would not just break my heart. It would change everything I believed about my husband, my marriage, and the life I thought was mine to live. And as she stepped closer, lowering her veil completely, I braced myself for the truth she had come to deliver, knowing it would tear open a wound I wasn't yet ready to face. The church fell silent the moment the priest closed his Bible. But my mind, it was screaming. Because while everyone bowed their heads, I kept replaying the message I saw on my husband's phone at the funeral. A simple notification. A name I had never seen. And 6 words that refused to leave my head. Is it done? Did she cry? Those words crawled through my chest like fire. As people moved toward the graveside, I stepped away, pretending to wipe my tears. But really I was watching. Watching faces. Watching reactions. Watching for anyone who looked nervous when the phone lit up again in my hand. And then I noticed him. A man standing at the far corner. Hands in his pockets. Eyes locked on me. Not mourning. Just observing. When our eyes met, he looked away too quickly. I didn't recognize him. He wasn't family. He wasn't a friend. He wasn't clergy. So why was he at my husband's funeral? And why was he watching me instead of the coffin? I clutched the phone tighter. Whoever sent that message, and whoever that man was, I knew one thing. My husband didn't just leave secrets behind. He left enemies. And one of them was standing just a few feet away. The burial ended. People whispered condolences, held my hands, touched my shoulder. But the entire time, my eyes kept drifting back to him. The stranger. The watcher. The only person who didn't seem sad that my husband was gone. When everyone began to leave, he didn't join the crowd. He moved slower, deliberately, almost waiting for me to be alone. I pretended not to notice. I stayed back, staring at the coffin as it disappeared beneath the soil. But my heart, it was thundering. Then I heard footsteps behind me, slow, heavier than a mourner's shuffle. I turned. He was standing just a little too close. His smile was polite, but wrong, forced, like someone trying to hide something behind their teeth. "Mrs. Williams," he said softly, even though I never told him my name. "My condolences. Your husband was a good man." "Do I know you?" I asked. He paused, just for a second, but long enough for me to see the lie forming. "We met briefly," he said. "A long time ago." But his eyes, they weren't on me. They were on my husband's phone in my hand. And then, as if confirming every fear I had, the phone vibrated again. A new message. I didn't even look at it. I didn't need to, because the stranger's expression changed. His jaw tightened. His breath hitched. His eyes flicked from the phone, to me, to the coffin. And in that tiny moment of panic I realized. He knew exactly who was texting. He knew exactly what the messages meant. And he knew I wasn't supposed to see them. "Be careful, Mrs. Williams," he whispered, stepping back. "Some things are better left buried." Then he turned and walked away, fast this time, as if he had already said too much. But I wasn't afraid. I was furious. Whatever my husband was involved in, whoever this man was, they thought I would break, hide, run. Well, I wanted answers. And I was ready to dig until I found them. The burial ended. People whispered condolences, held my hands, touched my shoulder. But the entire time, my eyes kept drifting back to him. The stranger. The watcher. The only person who didn't seem sad that my husband was gone. When everyone began to leave, he didn't join the crowd. He moved slower, deliberately, almost waiting for me to be alone. I pretended not to notice. I stayed back, staring at the coffin as it disappeared beneath the soil. But my heart, it was thundering. Then I heard footsteps behind me, slow, heavier than a mourner's shuffle. I turned. He was standing just a little too close. His smile was polite, but wrong, forced, like someone trying to hide something behind their teeth. "Mrs. Williams," he said softly, even though I never told him my name. "My condolences. Your husband was a good man." "Do I know you?" I asked. He paused, just for a second, but long enough for me to see the lie forming. "We met briefly," he said. "A long time ago." But his eyes, they weren't on me. They were on my husband's phone in my hand. And then, as if confirming every fear I had, the phone vibrated again. A new message. I didn't even look at it. I didn't need to, because the stranger's expression changed. His jaw tightened. His breath hitched. His eyes flicked from the phone, to me, to the coffin. And in that tiny moment of panic I realized. He knew exactly who was texting. He knew exactly what the messages meant. And he knew I wasn't supposed to see them. "Be careful, Mrs. Williams," he whispered, stepping back. "Some things are better left buried." Then he turned and walked away, fast this time, as if he had already said too much. But I wasn't afraid. I was furious. Whatever my husband was involved in, whoever this man was, they thought I would break, hide, run. Well, I wanted answers. And I was ready to dig until I found them. The house felt colder that night, as if the walls themselves knew something I didn't. I sat alone in the bedroom holding my husband's phone. The same phone that had lit up during his funeral. The same phone that refused to stop vibrating with messages from an unknown number. Every message carried the same haunting tone. "You promised. Don't leave me in this alone. You said she would never know. But finally, now that she's seen this, what do we do?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard. A voice message suddenly appeared. I hesitated, staring at it, feeling my heartbeat thudding in my fingertips. When I finally pressed play, a woman's voice filled the room, shaky, afraid, unraveling. Please, you said you'd fix this. You said nobody would get hurt. I can't sleep. Can't think. My life is falling apart and you're just... The message cut off. But it was enough to tell me my husband had been involved with something far bigger than I ever imagined. Something dangerous. Hours passed with me sitting in silence, trying to understand the pieces that didn't fit. The stranger at the funeral. His warning. The panic in his eyes. The messages from this unknown woman. My husband's sudden death. None of it was random. None of it was normal. By dawn, I already knew what I had to do. I scrolled through the messages again and noticed the very first one had a pinned location. A small, secluded guest lodge on the outskirts of town. A place my husband would never normally go. I drove there without telling anyone. The lodge was quiet, almost forgotten by the world. But room 7, the room pinned in the message, had its light on. I walked toward the door, feeling fear crawling up my spine. I knocked. A woman's voice whispered from inside. Who is it? My name is Mrs. Williams, I said carefully. You've been messaging my husband. The door opened just enough to reveal her face. A young woman, exhausted, terrified, and trembling. Tears pooled in her eyes the moment she saw me. You're not supposed to be here, she whispered. And yet I am. She stepped aside and let me in. The room was a mess. Papers everywhere, clothes thrown across the floor. A bag half packed like she'd been preparing to run. She sat on the edge of the bed, twisting her fingers. I'm not trying to destroy your life, she said. I swear I'm not. Then why were you messaging my husband? I asked. Her voice cracked. Because he was helping me. That was the last answer I expected. She told me her name was Anna. She worked at the same company as my husband. She had uncovered massive corruption. Money meant for community development was being stolen by senior executives. When she tried to speak out, someone tried to silence her. She was threatened, hurt, left with no one to trust. And then my husband found out. He saved me, she whispered. He protected me. He gathered evidence. He hid it. He told me I wasn't alone. My throat tightened as I listened. She wasn't my husband's lover. She wasn't trying to sabotage my marriage. She wasn't the reason he died. She was the reason he was fighting. He hid everything in his phone, she said. The documents, the recordings, everything. And the people involved. They're dangerous. They want those files destroyed. And the man from the funeral? I asked. Her body tensed. He works for them. Before I could respond, someone knocked loudly at the door. The sound jolted both of us. Anna looked like she might collapse. Then a familiar voice spoke. Open the door, Anna. It was him. The same man from the funeral. My heart froze. I walked slowly to the door, ignoring Anna's desperate whisper begging me not to. When I opened it, he stood there with a cold smile. Mrs. Williams, he said calmly. We need to talk. No, I said. You need to tell me the truth. He sighed like he was tired of pretending. Your husband got involved in something he didn't understand, he said. He didn't know when to stop. He tried to expose you, I replied. The man's jaw tightened. You think this is about money? He asked. This is about power. And your husband didn't know his place. So you silenced him? I whispered. He didn't answer. And sometimes silence is louder than a confession. He smirked slightly. You won't be a problem. Grieving widows never are. He walked away like everything was already decided. But he underestimated me. Fear didn't break me. Grief didn't bury me. Silence would not protect him. I took Anna home with me. We locked the doors and began digging through my husband's phone. We searched for hours until I accidentally opened the gallery. Hidden as harmless wallpaper photos were images of documents. Proof of corruption, bank transfers, signed agreements, screenshots of conversations. And at the very end, a video. My husband appeared on screen. Alive. Breathing. Speaking directly to us. Anna, if you're seeing this, something's happened to me. But don't let them win. Give this to the police. And please, make sure my wife knows the truth. My chest tightened so painfully I couldn't breathe. He looked tired but determined. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, he said. I just didn't want you to be in danger. But I had to do what was right. The video ended. And I broke. We gave the evidence to authorities. The investigation exploded. Executives were arrested. Headlines spread everywhere. My husband was praised for his bravery. They called him a hero. But for me, he was simply a good man who refused to look away. One morning weeks later the phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. My heart jumped as I opened it. Only one sentence. He kept his promise. I didn't reply. I simply closed my eyes and whispered, I know. Please follow me for no reason.